So a new mod called Day of Reckoning was recently announced for Heroes of Might and Magic 3 Complete Edition, and I think this could be big. It's described by its creators as a fan expansion, which is a phrase that immediately brings to mind the Horn of the Abyss mod, and if Day of Reckoning is even close to the quality level of Horn of the Abyss, this could be really exciting. So I'm going to take an in-depth look at the teaser trailer released for the project, and go through some of the potential features that might not be obvious just from watching it. So the first thing we see is Gelu, the sharpshooter specialist, disembarks from a boat, and he appears to have some kind of new appearance on the adventure map. After disembarking, he activates a new object called a magic dampener, which is clearly based on the lighthouse, and it increases the magic resistance of all allied heroes by 10%. Obviously an object like that has the potential to be extremely powerful, but there's not a lot of context given here, and we don't yet know what type of maps these are going to appear on. Gelu then has a monologue where he mentions the home of his ancestors, and he spots a hero named Falagar, and they have a conversation in what appears to be a newly designed dialogue box. When he's done talking to Falagar, he accesses a new kind of observatory building, and this is where things get really interesting. As we look around the map, we can see a lot of new features. The elephant in the room is there appears to be a completely new type of town with blue walls and purple roofs, and it turns out we actually have a pretty good idea what this is. During his monologue, Gelu mentions that he's returning to the land of his ancestors, and Gelu is actually said to be half human and half snow elf, and the snow elves come from a place called Vori. Falagar then mentions Vori during their conversation. The snow elves are a real race that officially exist within the world of Heroes of Might and Magic 3, but neither they or Vori actually make a real appearance in the game. The closest we get is the Sword of Frost campaign, which is included in the Heroes Chronicles campaign expansion pack. The Vori lands are said to be the home of the Sword of Frost, which is kind of like the opposite version of the Armageddon's Blade. In fact, the Sword of Frost clashing with the Armageddon's Blade is the event that's said to destroy the world of Enroth, which is where Heroes 3 is set. That event is known as the Reckoning, and it's fair to say that it's almost certainly the inspiration for the mod's name. But putting all that aside, in hindsight, something feels very appropriate about a mod finally fleshing out the Vori Snow Elves into a proper faction. In addition to that, we can see a lot of other obstacles. For example, in the northwest of the map we can see what appears to be a couple of new artifacts. One is a blue warhammer, and the other is some kind of blue orb. On the opposite side of the screen we can see what appears to be some kind of blue beacon, and quite close to Gelu we can see what appears to be a different type of Pandora's box. There are also a couple of fairly weakly guarded blue objects, which if I had to guess might just be some kind of new resource. And in addition to the blue orb that we see in the northwest of the screen, we can also see some kind of white orb very close to Gelu, and on the east of the screen we can see some kind of green orb. And we can also see what appears to be a few types of new creatures. For example, in the east there is something that kind of resembles an orc, and we can also see quite close to this new form of Pandora's box, there is also some kind of fountain quite close to a group of goblins. Possibly though the most interesting thing we can see apart from the town itself is what appears to be an oil rig to the west. It even includes what appears to be some kind of helicopter pad. Now this might be setting off alarm bells in people's heads because this does appear to be completely out of place in Heroes of Might and Magic 3, but I will come back to it later in the video to explain why I don't actually think it's going to be an issue for most people. Then as the map pans to the north, we can see that a number of other new map objects are revealed. Firstly, in the very north of the map there appears to be some kind of new monolith. Then over in the east we can see what appears to be some kind of wall, which joins up to an unclaimed garrison. Just south of that garrison we can see what appears to be some kind of black and green obelisk, and slightly to the west of that we can see what appears to be some kind of new creature dwelling. We can also see a new type of creature dwelling just to the north of the new town, which is guarded by some vampires. To the west of that, near the artifacts we spoke about earlier, we can also see some kind of new object, which appears to be a building with a fountain in the middle. Gelu then goes up to talk to Falagar, who is revealed as a new kind of hero class called an Oracle, and he also appears to have 4 different types of new creatures with him. Falagar, by the way, appears to be the same hero who appeared previously in the game Heroes of Might and Magic 2. He then takes a fight with the nearby gargoyles, and we can now see the different types of creatures. The first creatures we can see carrying a sack on their backs. I have to admit I wasn't sure of at first because they kind of resemble Santa Claus, but it turns out that these are actually called Tomte, and they're based on small humanoid creatures from Nordic folklore, very similar to gnomes. And in that regard you can see how they fit into the game alongside creatures like pixies, sprites and leprechauns. The 5th slot is taken by units called Ice Maidens, and what's interesting about this is we later see that they're able to cast either Ice Bolt or Frost Ring up to 3 times per battle at no cost to your hero. The Snow Elves are said to have a good grasp of water magic, so it may be that the Ice Maidens actually represent the Snow Elves themselves. Then in the 4th slot of his forces he has what I'm guessing is some kind of female tree spirit, and in the 6th and 7th slot we can see a Snow Tiger and what appears to be a kind of Yeti inspired unit. And I'm guessing either these Yeti looking creatures or these Snow Tigers are going to be the creatures that belong to the Snow Cave dwelling that we saw guarded by vampires earlier on. The Tree Spirit creatures are revealed as Dryads. He then finishes the fight by casting Armageddon and explores to the northwest. He then encounters a couple of what appears to be Frost Giants, and they immediately cast what appears to be some kind of snowstorm spell. Gaelu then tries to cast Ice Bolt on them, but the two creatures are revealed to be immune, and that is where the teaser ends. Since recording the previous section, I've had another look, and it turns out these creatures are actually called Jotun. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but essentially they're named after legendary Nordic Frost Giants. And we can see that they cast a Frosty Mass Damage spell, presumably the reverse of Armageddon, which might also tie into the whole Sword of Frost being the opposite of Armageddon's blade thing. For a split second at the end of the video, we also get a brief look at this unit's stats, and we can see that they're extremely similar to Titans, perhaps the equivalent for a different element. There are some differences, and we don't know whether these Frost Giants have other abilities beyond summoning snowstorms and immunity to water magic, but it's a good hint that the balance of this mod is trying to be somewhere close to the original game. That would make it more similar to a mod like Horn of the Abyss than a more sandboxy mod like Wake of Gods. So there is quite a lot to take in there, and there's quite a lot that I don't know, but I'm going to spend the rest of the video just talking about some of the background information around this mod, and speculating on some of the features that might be included. Day of Reckoning was revealed by a Heroes community member by the name of Fire Paladin, who it turns out has been dropping hints about this for quite some time. The description of the teaser trailer mentions that the mod has been developed by the Day of Reckoning project alongside MDT. MDT stands for the Mod Design Team. They've been around for years now making mods for a different Heroes 3 fan project called VCMI. But this suggests to me that with Day of Reckoning, some of their work might finally be available for Heroes 3 Complete Edition. MDT projects include the Alternative Units mod, which adds a new kind of optional unit to each town from the original game, which can be recruited in place of one of the units from their vanilla lineup. A big hint here is that one of the units in the Alternative Units mod does appear to be the Dryad we saw earlier in the teaser trailer. MDT also developed a couple of new mod towns of their own. One is a desert town called Oasis, and the other is their own version of New World Computing's abandoned Forge Town. Some of you might have seen my playthrough a while back using a modded version of the Forge Town on Heroes 3 Complete Edition, and I believe that mod was an unofficial port of the Forge Town created by the MDT. It wasn't a perfect port as none of the creatures had special abilities included, but I will leave a link to that playthrough in the description in case you're interested. It's possible that this version of Forge might make an appearance in Day of Reckoning, which would explain why a sci-fi looking object like the oil rig from earlier might appear in this mod. However, Fire Paladin did suggest in a comment that it will be possible for players to switch Forge off if they don't like its inclusion in the game. That of course suggests that Day of Reckoning itself is going to be modular in design. It might introduce a large number of new features or new towns, then give players the option to choose which ones are included. That would also explain why a comment he made on Reddit suggested it might be possible for Day of Reckoning and Horn of the Abyss to coexist on the same installation of the game. My initial reaction is that sounds too good to be true, but you never know. A member of the MDT was also involved in developing a fan town named Courtyard, and we have reason to believe Courtyard will also be included in Day of Reckoning. During the teaser trailer, we see a creature on the adventure map that clearly resembles the Mandrake from that town. For now though, we haven't quite got a reliable sign the town will be a core part of the mod, but it's interesting that a hint was included. They also designed some new artifacts such as wands, which enable heroes to cast certain spells without using spell points, and it definitely seems possible that something like these could appear in the mod as well. Anyway, we've seen a hint suggesting more will be revealed about Day of Reckoning on the 10th of February, and there's clearly a team working hard on it. I will leave a link to their YouTube channel in the description of the video, so you can catch any additional trailers there. In the meantime, I'm really interested to see what this mod will be, and in particular, I really do hope we get to see some of the high quality mods created by the mod design team finally make their way over to Heroes 3 Complete Edition in some form. Goes without saying, I'm definitely open to covering the mod more on the channel later, so do subscribe if it interests you. But that's all for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.